I want to give a shout out to whoever this person is on Twitter. I don't know who they are. Jongaritis. Bernie Sanders. We will go to war against white nationalism and racism. Also, Bernie, when asked if the Palestinians should have equal rights in Israel, said the following. Those who are fast readers know I kind of spoiled the ending, but embedded in that tweet are these two juxtaposed video clips that'll really get your blood boiling if you invest in them enough. So here's Bernie Sanders.
I'm Jewish. My family came from Poland. My father's whole family was wiped out by Hitler and his white nationalism. Too many people have fought over the years. Too many people have died against racism to allow it to resurface and flourish in America. We will go to war against white nationalism and racism in every aspect of our lives.
It's increasingly evident that hopes for a two-state solution are almost dead. At the same time, polls among Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Gaza are showing that they're increasingly in favor of a one-state solution with equal rights for Israelis and Palestinians alike and equal citizenship. Is that something you believe could happen, or is that something you support?
No, I don't. I mean, I think if that happens, then that would be the end of the state of Israel. And I support Israel's right to exist.
Okay, so you're against Trump's white nationalism on what basis? Like, if you don't believe a one-state solution with equal rights for Palestinians and Israelis is viable because that would somehow impede Israel's right to exist, then on what basis do you oppose the supposed white nationalism of Donald Trump? On what basis? And I'm glad I have you here for this, Tusker, because a point you've often made, and a point that a lot of communists and really hardcore leftists often make, is that there is a certain chauvinism to social democrats, a certain chauvinism to, democratic socialists in advanced Western countries. And I think this really shows that. Like, yeah, he's against white nationalism here because it'll make life less comfortable in our own home Western country. But he's not. I mean, in the case of Israel, it really is white nationalism. I mean, a lot of these Israelis they're white people. They're white people. So white nationalism for Israel is okay, apparently, but not for us. That is Western chauvinism. That speaks to a point you've often made, which is a blind spot of the Bernie Sanders movement and a real sort of inherent hypocrisy to social democrats in general.
Yes. So first of all, I would like to take the word white out of nationalism. We're talking about just nationalism. Now, there are a couple of different types of nationalism. There's nationalism that's fighting for their own self-determination and their own sovereignty. That, I'm fine with that type of nationalism. You see that in what it is that we call national wars for liberation. Things like Angola, sure. What I would consider Palestine might be undergoing at the moment. That type of nationalism that is a unity among a group of people for their own sovereignty and their own self-determination, I can support that. The type of nationalism that breeds itself to chauvinism can be accomplished by anybody, no matter their skin color. That it can and it would be, accomplished by that. It just so happens that at the time that the nationalism movement really kicked off, it was led in Germany and the European nations. And so that's the reason why we associate white nationalism with it. But nationalism that seeks the domination and destruction of other nations is the type of nationalism that is dangerous because it does not care about humanity. It does not care about civil liberties. It does not care about self-determination of people. And frankly, the way that you often see those types of movements behave is because they feel especially victim. This was something that happened back in up until the 1917 revolution. That was a huge talking point. It's the reason why we wrote multiple volumes like Marxism and the National Question, where theoretically we went through all of this. And one of the things that happened is you had the Jewish Bund that was kind of more of the social democratic side. And they kept pushing for special rights for the Jews. special rights, not equal rights, special rights. And then there were a bunch of tracts that, the communists wrote in a response to that and saying, no special rights. You don't get special rights. It's equal rights for all. And that is what I uphold. I want equal rights for all.
Yeah.
Period.
Of course. And I mean, here, I just have to play this again. I mean, it's short. Just the second half of this.
Almost dead. At the same time, polls among Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Gaza are showing that they're increasingly in favor of a one-state solution with equal rights for Israelis and Palestinians alike and equal citizenship. Is that something you believe could happen, or is that something you support?
No, I don't. I mean, I think if that happens, then that would be the end of the state of Israel. And I support Israel's right to exist.
Okay, so who is eliminationist here? Who is genocidal here? This is a thing that comes up in the river to the sea conversation over and over again. It was actually Israelis who coined that phrase, from the river to the sea, meaning essentially what they've been in pursuit of for these past 75 years, which is this will be a Jewish state from the Jordan to the Mediterranean. When the campus protesters chant it, what they are saying is, we want free and equal rights for Palestinian people on this land. There's nothing eliminationist about that, except for the fact that Israel will not agree to that. So Israel is the one that's making that language as charged as they claim it is. And what Bernie's doing there is adding to that. Why can't we just have one state with equal rights for everyone on this land? He says, well, because that would be the end of Israel.
Why?
No, it wouldn't. Why?
No. Just real quick. Why would it be the end of Israel?
Well, because
Why?
Israel insists on being a Jewish state and not a democratic state. And that puts Bernie Sanders, by the way, hold on, I'll let you butt in just a second, but this is an important point to make. That puts Bernie Sanders to the right of John Kerry, who, as Obama's Secretary of State, said Israel can either be a Jewish state or a democratic one. It cannot be both. Those are the words of John Kerry, serving as Obama's Secretary of State less than 10 years ago. And so Bernie Sanders, there he is, to the right of John Kerry on one of the main issues of our time.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, exactly. But what he's saying there is he's saying that there is a risk. There's a risk to Israel if Palestinians have equal rights. It is an incursion. It will cause Israel not to exist anymore by nature of offering democracy and freedom, civil liberties, and equality to Palestinian people.
Right.
What a psycho.
Right.
What a psycho.
Yep.
To think that an ethnostate is advanced and progressive.
Exactly.
There's a lot that I will give credit to Bernie Sanders. I would not be politically where I am if he did not come along because of my background in healthcare. That's what attracted me to Bernie Sanders. I am forever grateful for him to turning me on to leftism and encouraging me to do my own research after all of the failures of the so-called progressive movement. It's a stasis movement. It has nothing to do with progress. It wants to keep you in place. It wants to keep the people calm, quelled, and relying on heroes, on these so-called heroes like Bernie Sanders. He's going to walk out and say something. And look at how uncomfortable he was in that. Just the twitchiness.
Yeah.
Like he knows. He feels guilt about it because he knows what Israel is doing. And he's like, well, no, it's threatening Israel's right to exist.
Yeah,
why do you feel that guilt?
Because he's a weak bastard. Yeah, he knows it's wrong. He is a man of the left. I mean, people say Bernie is a communist, and his public life. Well, he does not espouse that in his public life. I've known enough Jews from New York to know that in his heart of hearts, he probably is a communist. He probably is a communist.
We think he probably is.
I think he probably is. Like a lot of these New York Jewish guys are like my dad. They are communists at heart. He knows that he'll get nadered if he espouses that, and so he doesn't. And that's why he was our pick for sellout of the year last year, because he knows. He is far enough left to know that we need a ceasefire now, and yet he won't call for it. Right? I mean, he knows that much. He knows that much. And that's why I called it
left to know that Cuban literacy programs are a good thing. But he's not far enough left to know that killing innocent children, men, women, families, journalists, you're not far left enough to recognize that. Oh, but cool, the Cuban literacy programs. Get on board, Bernie.
My dad's a communist. My dad says the same thing about Castro that Bernie said. Bernie, in his heart of hearts, is a communist. He is. I know that makes you uncomfortable because he doesn't espouse that publicly. But trust me, I know that. I grew up with, forget it. When the World Series was on, when the Yankees made the World Series, I go to my grandmother's house. It was a living room overflowing with Bernie Sanders types. They're all communists. He's a communist in his heart. He knows what is just in this situation, and he will not advocate for it. He will not advocate for it because he is either afraid that they'll throw his wife in jail for whatever she pulled with the college in Vermont, or he is just afraid to marginalize himself in that way. He has gotten very, very far in life, as Chris Hedges has said over and over again, by signaling when it counts, when the rubber hits the road, that he will not threaten the Democratic Party in any meaningful way. That's why he is where he is. That's why he's allowed to stay where he is. That's why the Democrats don't challenge him in Vermont. They could run a candidate against him and knock him out. He runs as an independent. He doesn't run on the Democratic Party line. They could knock him out of that seat if they wanted to. They don't, because he serves them at the end of the day. At the end of the day, he's useful, of course.
Yep. He is a happy little lapdog. But that's kind of the point. Sure, maybe you can say like communist, and it doesn't make me uncomfortable at all. What I'm talking about is he communist?
No, I'm saying, he's making us look. We can't say he's a communist. He makes us look bad. I'm saying,
no.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about is he's not in action because he only believes in individual leadership. He thinks that he is so important, that he is so central. He doesn't understand that people are the motive force of history, that nothing happens without the people. You cannot be an independent revolutionary. He disagrees. He thinks that if he just gets up there and he gets the votes, and if his reputation isn't damaged, then he'll be able to move mountains for the masses. The masses don't need you to move mountains for them. They need you to give them the power and the ability to move those mountains on their own. That's what he doesn't understand. He ultimately sees himself as a individual, not part of a group, not actually part of the working class.
Of course. If
you set yourself outside the working class and say, I speak for all working people, then you're not part of the working class. You've stepped outside of it. And he's disconnected from it. And that's the reason why he continues to make the worst political mistakes that you can see.
Yes, and he does not have the courage of his convictions. And that's my main point. I see some people in the chat, no, he's not a communist. No, he's not a communist. I'm not arguing that he functions as a communist. I'm telling you, you get Bernie Sanders alone in a room and he knows that no one is ever going to hear what he says outside that room. You ask him what he thought of Castro. You ask him what he thought of Che Guevara. You ask him what he thought of the Soviet Union. He is a communist. And I'm telling you. And that makes him more of a coward, not less. I'm actually indicting him more by saying that. I'm telling you.
Because he knows better.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I've met a million Bernie Sanders. My father's a Bronx Jew. I've met 1,000 Bernie Sanders in my life. They're all communists when no one's looking. He doesn't have the courage to be that when someone is looking. So that's even more of an indictment.
Please clap.